What's up, friends? Welcome to another episode of Chord to Surf. It's your boy again, back with another episode on this podcast. Into this podcast, I'm going to talk about church. Everybody say church, preach. Yeah, I'm sure you know that song. I'm sure you're not oversaved. You know that song. You know where we're from, eh? I'm here to talk about church today, a dope place to be in. And before I jump into it, I'd like to ask you one thing. Did you go to church last Sunday? Did you? No, don't look at me like that. Did you go to church? If you didn't, I'd like to understand why. Drop it down in the comments below. Or you can text me on my WhatsApp. If you got my WhatsApp number, text me, Like, yo, gee, I didn't go to church because, some girl broke my heart. And then, oh, somebody owes me money. They haven't been giving back to me. So I don't go to church anymore. Text me on my WhatsApp number. I'm sure it'll be in the description of this video. Anyways, let's get into it. When I was growing up, I never really understood why going to church was important, And I used to go to church because my family is going to church. And I would be there just going for the sake of going to church, It's like a thing. It was like a thing that everyone is doing in the house, and you're doing it. And most times it's because the people in the house are taking you with them to church. Those days you don't want to go. It's like to church. Kasambendish, kachinje for the church. Church. That type of thing. So I was very young and I wouldn't understand why they are taking me to church. Then at this stage in my life, I've understood the importance of church. Like, church is very important for anyone that is building or that hopes to keep their personal relationship with God. You need to go to church. Church is important. For me, I personally believe church is not just a place you go to. It's it's a family you belong to. Church is a family you belong to. It's more like a home away from home. It's like a home apart from your physical home, your parents' home. That's what church is supposed to be. Church is supposed to be a place where you find purpose, where you find God's promise, where you find pleasure, where you find comfort. That is what church is for me, and that's what I feel every church is supposed to be. Church is, let me emphasize this again. Church is very, very important. Going to church is very, very important for anybody that believes in God or a Christian. Our Christian, for anybody that believes in God, for anybody that claims to be a true Christian, church is very, very important. Excuse me. If the pop slapped today, we had some good stuff. But anyways, that's not what I'm here to talk about. Yeah, so I'm here to church is very important. It's essential. It's another essential thing for a believer in God. Go to church. I know the pandemic came and the pandemic and COVID came and it gave a whole lot of us a good reason to not go to church. So, we're not going to church, there's COVID, shine, a lot of us stopped going to church. Then we had all these online things our churches came up with, online. Then also there was a time period where we were allowed to go to church when the COVID thing is reduced, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, the COVID thing is reduced and we're allowed to go to church a little bit. We still had people with cool excuses like, I want to have church now before I'm a mask here. If it come a church now, mask you are the cook for la. And I'm very life of fair for someone. But I reach online, but pass so to a lot of online, we still had those cool excuses of not why we shouldn't go to church. And also there are certain people when you ask them these days, why don't you go to church, they'll be like, me in MP never pastor something, pastor something by YouTube, but I quite Sunday service every Sunday, but pastor something on YouTube. So I just pray from YouTube, I'm here to tell you this. Go to church. Go to church. Go to a physical church. It's important to belong to a church. It's important to belong to a home away from home. because that's what church is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a home. It's supposed to be a place where you feel comfortable, where you feel less judgment, where you can easily feel safe, where you can easily confess your mistakes without judgment. And speaking of judgment, I know and I understand. I understand a lot of us have been hurt by the church, and also the fact that church is one of the most judgmental places you can ever go to. I won't even deny that and stand in front, be in front of this camera like, yo, they don't judge you at church. It's a cool place. Yeah, I go to church. I go to church almost every Sunday. I go minimum. I go 3 times a month. The fourth Sunday of the month, I intentionally take a day off. But I go to church, and I can tell you for a fact that church is one of the most judgmental places you can ever walk into. So much judgmental people. They'll look at you. Hey, but I want to kushani. Why is that church? Hey, but I watch the shani. And especially if you sin and it's evident, or you sin and somebody in the church knows, it will go viral. Even it will reach even the pulpit, somehow. And the biggest example I can give it, say, if you're a young lady, you fall pregnant, because that's evident. Once the baby pops up, you cannot hide. But people in the church, instead of accepting you like that, they'll begin to point fingers. Oh, so twale mnakwati yo shani. Wale shitashani. Kanshi wale busy. Mwane nomba wapule fumo. Wale mina kutanshi wachiti wale imbisha. I use Sing as an example because I've seen this on 2 occasions where she was a leader of the choir every Sunday. Then we just see her a month later, she's pregnant. 3 months later, she's pregnant. And then everybody's like judging her, I just hate when that happens. Like, people in the church judge somebody because their sin is evident, and there's like, you also had sex. The fact that you guys didn't make a baby, she made a baby, and it's evident you both fornicated. The fact that we can't see it on you that you had sex yesterday, and the fact that we can see it on her that she had sex and they had a baby which they didn't mean to have. You're both fornicators. You both had sex before marriage, so don't point fingers at the other person. That was just to overemphasize that I understand that church can be a very judgmental place. It is a very judgmental place because of us people, and we can't blame anyone else apart from ourselves, because we can make church a better place than it is right now. Each and every single one of us. A lot of us in the church behave like the prodigal son's brother. Not the prodigal son, the prodigal son's brother. The way he behaved when the brother came back after going away, after the prodigal son was like, Butah, Bali, toss me my rocks, except Bali, toss me my rocks, except Bali. I need to bounce, except Bali, toss me my rocks. I need to bounce. I need to go and party, except I know you have my shares, except you said I have to inherit some slacks from you. But toss me my shares, I go and throw it your party with the arms, except. That was the prodigal son, talking to his father, asking for his inheritance. Then he goes, he enjoys his money. Then the money finishes. He realizes he could be living after the money is done. I'm sure you know the story in Luke, if I'm not wrong, Luke 15, somewhere there. After he parties and all that stuff, he realizes this is not the life. I could be living better. In my father's house, I was a king, or I was a prince, or something like that. Then he goes back to the father's house, and the father accepts him. No questions, no shani, no era kabudo, no such thing. No, there was nothing like that. The prodigal son just came back, and his father accepted him with open arms and gave him a kiss on the cheek, like, I missed you, my son. You were lost, now you are found. And I think that's how Jesus and God is with a lot of us. I know I've diverted a little bit, but I'm trying to drive a point home here is that go to church. It doesn't matter how much you have sinned, how much you have sinned, go to church. God is ready to accept you. It's not about the people. The people want to accept you. The people will judge you. But go to church. Go back to church. Go back to the Father. He's ready to accept you. And when you go back to church, don't focus on the people. Don't go to church for the people. Don't ever make that mistake. Don't go to church for the people. Go to church for God. Focus on God. It's not an easy thing to do with all those people in the church. Because one thing I've understood about people is that people will ruin your personal relationship with God. If you focus on the people, they'll ruin your personal relationship with God. I'm going to give you an example. You have your thing going with Jesus. You have your personal relationship with Jesus going, and then you constantly go to church. You're consistent. 4 times a month you go to church. Then a brother, you lend money to a brother in church, a brother in Christ in church. You lend them. Brethren, panisha waleti. Then umakofi 150. Therefore, do the coffee card tithe. Karen have kilepo. What me 150 as a person of God? What me 150? What pay our brother in Christ? What poka na envedo put wa shapa bika muri thingy. What do the tithe? Number idia shidi akuwisha dia shupa. Now you have to start reminding the brother every Sunday now. Brother, karaga 150 my shimekara mabikira mtithe. Chiteshani. Stories just that like that. That's a good example of how people can ruin your relationship with God. Now you're mad at the church. Now you get mad not at the brother, but you get mad at the people in the church. And you start saying things like, but I walk church, like, that's the people. And that's not God. You have all your reasons why you shouldn't go to church, but I'm here to encourage you today. Go to church. Start going to church. And if you have stopped going to church in the name of somebody did something to you in the church, or maybe you like this girl in the church, she broke your heart, and then you have all the reasons why you shouldn't go to church because somebody broke your heart in the church, go back to church. Church is important. And don't go to church for the people. Go to church for God. Focus on God. People will ruin your relationship with God. The book of Hebrews reminds us to encourage one another to go to church. And also the same book of Hebrews emphasizes on how not going to church is a bad habit. This should tell you that going to church is an important part of your personal relationship with God. You cannot maintain or build a personal relationship with God minus going to church. All your reasons for not going to church before are justified. COVID, justified. Post-COVID masks, justified. Somebody didn't pay you back your money, justified. Somebody you lent money in the church isn't giving back to you, justified. The church is a judgmental place, justified. But if you go to the church and focus so much on the people, you miss God. Because I'm going to say this again. People will ruin your relationship with God if you focus on the people. Focus on God. God is the church. And to all of you that are growing wings right now, as I'm talking about the church, let me tell you one thing, is that you cannot claim to love God and hate the church. It's that simple. You cannot claim to be a believer of God and hate the church. You cannot claim to be a believer of God and neglect going to church. You just then, I know we pray with Pastor something on YouTube. Okay. Belong to a church. Belong to a physical church. If the church you go to doesn't feel like home, look for another one. I'm not saying this to encourage you to change churches or to jump from one church to another. Look for this church where it's feeding the vibes, it feels like the place. Nah. I'm telling you to look for a home. Church is a home because church is not a place you just go to. It is a family you belong to. So it is very important to go to church. And if you're somebody that's watching this video and you've been out of the church because You feel judged. You feel judged by the people in the church because of that one time you messed up, because of that one time you were so much in sin and you felt guilty that if you go back to the church, nobody's going to accept you. But I'm telling you this, God is waiting to accept you like the father to the prodigal son has accepted him when he came back. God is waiting to celebrate your return to the church. He's waiting to celebrate your return to the church. I know people won't celebrate you, but God will celebrate you walking back in the church. God will celebrate you walking back into church this Sunday, walking back into church, sitting down there, worshiping, praising, and listening to the full sermon. And after Sunday service, you say hi to somebody. Don't focus on the people in your church. Of course, there are very nice people you meet in the church. Not everybody is like judgmental and all that funny stuff. They're very nice and welcoming and kaya so much, and that hospitable people. In the church you'll find those people. But if you've been away from the church because you felt you were too sinful or you sinned so much and you felt guilty, I'm here to tell you this: God is waiting for you to come back to the church. Come back to the church. God is waiting to celebrate you like the father of the prodigal son did when his son came back. He threw an entire party. And when you go back to church this Sunday, if you've been away from the church for a long time, when you go back to church this Sunday, God is going to throw a party in heaven. Kaleza. So go back to church. Don't be, one word to my friends who've been in the church for some time now. You feel justified, you feel holier than thou, because we are not able to see your own sins. And you're in the church and you're all that, you feel like you're all that. Please, don't be a reason somebody stays out of the church. Don't be a reason why somebody doesn't come back to church. Let's not judge people for messing up. We messed up, all of us. Saved by grace for faith. We messed up. We all messed up. We all sin on Saturday. We all sin on Saturday. You drunkard. Even you were banging on Saturday and you came to church on Sunday. Just because she's pregnant and it's evident doesn't make you any less of a sinner. You're both sinners. Come back to church. I hope this video has encouraged you to step back to church this Sunday. See you there. You say Z-way.